This Pecha Kucha presentation will be on female student athletes and student athletes of color. I'm very passionate about student athletes. I used to be one in my prime. Unfortunately, I'm not anymore. This is my wife, who used to play soccer. I'm at the University of Mobile, so she does fall in the category of female student athletes. So athletes who are women or students of color, or really both, like other college athletes, play the dual role of student and athlete. However, these two groups also share the distinction of being two of the most visible of the historically unrepresented groups in higher education. As a result, they are the inherent status of minority. It's important to note as we move along that not all female athletes are white and not all athletes of color are male. So as we move forward in this presentation, we'll distinguish the issues for female athletes as well as male and female athletes of color. So we'll look at female student athletes first. Opportunities for women have really increased since the implementation of Title IX in the 1970s. Women's participation in college sports has really boomed since then, so that it went from 32,000 in 1972 to over 210,000 in 2015. Title IX not only increased the number of women participating in college, but it created many negative stimuli for them. Along with the increasing number of competition, it had a direct effect in increasing eating disorders, nutritional concerns, sport-related injuries, and sexual harassment among the female population. Female athletes have many of the personality traits found among young women with disorders of eating. They have intense discipline, desire to excel, a strong focus on their body and their looks. So we as student affairs professionals, we need to be aware of these problems and be able to recognize them quickly. With the way that student athlete schedules are, it's really hard for them to maintain healthy eating habits. With the way that their schedules are, like I said, it's often includes morning weights, classes, study hall, afternoon practice, studying again. It can really leave little time for eating balanced meals, so there's a big nutritional concern, especially within female athletes. Sports-related injuries for women are an increasingly important factor in the growing world of the women's athletics. My wife can attest to this. She has torn her ACL twice. She's torn her meniscus twice. So it's definitely an epidemic within the world of women's sports. Even physicians say that unfortunately, since women's sports have been growing so rapidly, sexual harassment has been a really rampant thing, unfortunately, in women's sports. So we as professionals, what we need to do is we need to be trained. We need to serve as advocates for women and student athletes and support them in their overall development as women. As we move forward, we're going to be kind of shifting gears to student athletes of color. Just to let you know, most of the literature that is available on this topic is focused on African American students. So that's really what we'll be looking at is the African American population of student athletes. So we see here, student athletes are pretty smart. I mean, these are the graduation rates, and they're pretty higher than most your average students. So what we have to do is we have to cultivate a culturally responsive approach that advocates a holistic perspective. I'm going to give you 5 elements that we need to do to address this. So the first element is the cultural competence, is acknowledging cultural differences and becoming aware of how these differences affect our helping. The second element is really appreciating cultural differences. We must recognize the influence of the students on cultural background and how they act and how they think. So such awareness is really pivotal to assist students as they cope with issues of exclusion, racism, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic background. The third element is understanding the dynamics of differences within culture. We know Miss Brittany Wagner from Last Chance U really had a good grasp on this. She knew kind of what distanced the guys and what really brought them together, and she really had a good grip on this element. The fourth element is understanding the meaning of behavior within a cultural context. What we need to do is we need to engage in discussion. Why do you take a knee while you're on the field? Why do you stand up? Why do you do this or why do you not do that? We have to have these discussions within a cultural context so we can understand the student athletes better. And the last element for professionals is knowing where and how to obtain specific cultural information. Learning about students' history, traditions, immigration patterns, celebrations, and language are all a part of the culture and should be incorporated within our profession. When it comes to male student athletes of color, one of the most difficult things that they have is coming from high school where they're the superstars, coming to college where they're just really another person, a part of their team and their crowd. They have a lot of issues with race, of course, exclusion, depression, and discrimination from professors and students. One of the major issues facing female athletes of color is the lack of role models. This combined with the high visibility can create stress, can create anxiety. Again, it can create exclusion. So we need to increase their role models, and we need to encourage these women of color to engage in the full experience of college life and who they are. In closing, female athletes continue to have to legitimize their athletic participation in the face of sexism. Student athletes of color face a community that might value them as athletes but not accept them as actual students. Female athletes and athletes of color are juggling multiple identities and roles as they strive to succeed. Our responsibility as student affairs professionals is to support these students in managing internal and external conflicts related to these identity issues and other forms of discrimination.